Okay, get this. I want you to imagine declaring a full-on national war on birds. And by doing that, you accidentally cause one of the worst famines in all of human history. Sounds completely made up, right? Well, it's not. It actually happened.
So, how on earth does that even happen? How do you connect the dots from a noisy little bird to mass starvation? Well, that's exactly where we're starting our tour of history's most catastrophic and, as you'll see, weirdly repeatable blunders.
So picture this, it's 1958 in China. The country's leader, Mao Zedong, decides that sparrows are public enemy number one. He's convinced they're just tiny thieves, gobbling up all the grain. So he launches this thing called the Pests Campaign and gets millions of people involved. Their job? To just make an insane amount of noise, banging pots, pans, drums, anything, so that the sparrows could never land. They were literally flown to death, just falling out of the sky from pure exhaustion.
And at first, it was a huge party. They thought they'd won. The sparrows were gone. But then, the locusts came. See, it turns out sparrows don't just eat grain. A huge part of their diet is insects. With their number one predator just wiped off the map, the locust population absolutely exploded. They swarmed across the country, ate everything, and triggered a famine that killed somewhere between 15 and 55 million people.
I mean, this analogy just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures what happens when you mess with a complex system you don't fully understand. It's a classic case of a solution being way, way worse than the original problem. The irony? They eventually had to import sparrows from the Soviet Union to fix the mess they made.
And here's the wild part. This kind of thinking isn't a one-off. It turns out we humans are shockingly good at making the same kinds of epic mistakes over and over again throughout history. So let's count down some of the most spectacular patterns of failure.
First up on our tour of historical facepalms, what happens when a really powerful ego goes up against the laws of physics? Here's a little spoiler for you. Physics always, always wins.
So in 1628, the Swedish king decided he wanted the biggest, baddest, most incredible warship the world had ever seen. He just kept demanding more cannons on a second gun deck, more gold statues, more decorations. The problem was, the shipbuilders knew this was making it incredibly top-heavy and unstable. They even did a quick little stability test, but when just 30 sailors running back and forth made the ship almost tip over, they panicked, stopped the test, and never told the king.
So, launch day comes, the whole city is watching, and a light breeze, that's all it took. The Vasa just tipped over and sank in less than 20 minutes. It's just a jaw-dropping story. And it sat there perfectly preserved in the cold water for 333 years. A stunning underwater monument to what happens when ego is more important than expertise.
And that leads us right into another classic human blunder. We get so obsessed with preventing the last disaster that we end up completely blind to the next one. The perfect example of this? The Maginot Line.
Okay, so after the absolute horror of trench warfare in World War I, France said, never again. They built the most incredible fortress in human history. We're talking underground bunkers, air conditioning, its own hidden railway system. It was an absolute masterpiece of defense. And the Germans, well, they just drove around it. They took their tanks right through a forest that the French High Command had officially declared was impossible.
It's just the perfect analogy for today, right? Think about it. A company spends millions of dollars on a state-of-the-art cybersecurity system, this impenetrable digital wall, but the entire network gets taken down because one employee clicks a sketchy link in a simple phishing email. We are always building the perfect defense against the last attack, while the new threat just waltzes right in through the back door.
All right, now for a failure that is truly paradoxical. This is a case where our absolute best intentions, something we all thought was good, backfired in the most catastrophic way you can imagine. Let's talk about our old friend Smokey Bear.
Now, the logic seemed totally flawless, didn't it? Forest fires are bad. They're destructive, so preventing them has to be good. And for about 70 years, we got incredibly good at it. We were stopping something like 98% of all forest fires before they could really get going. On paper, it was a massive success story. Or was it?
Here's what we didn't realize. Those small, naturally occurring fires are actually essential for a healthy forest. They're like nature's housekeepers, that clear out all the dead leaves, pine needles, and fallen branches on the forest floor. By stopping all those little fires, we are essentially letting decades and decades of kindling pile up. So now, when a fire does start, it doesn't just burn, it explodes into a terrifying mega-fire, supercharged by 70 years of fuel.
And that brings us to our final and frankly our most chilling pattern of failure. It's this toxic cocktail of overconfidence, of ignoring clear warnings, and of just plain old denial. And the ultimate tragic example is, of course, Chernobyl.
When you break it down like this, it's almost like a recipe for disaster. It's insane. To run a so-called safety test, the engineers at Chernobyl literally turned off all the safety systems. When alarms started blaring everywhere, they just assumed they were faulty and ignored them. Then, when they finally hit the emergency shutdown button, a design flaw actually caused a massive power surge that blew the reactor apart. And afterwards, officials told everyone not to worry, that a small contained fire had been put out.
And please, don't think this is just a nuclear thing. It's a deeply human thing. At 3 Mile Island, operators thought their own radiation alarms were broken. At Fukushima, officials knew for years the seawall wasn't high enough. At the Softwork Dam, the designer literally promised it was safe just hours before it collapsed and killed over 2,000 people. The pattern is always the same. We trust our own assumptions more than the blaring red warning lights right in front of our faces.
So in the end, these aren't just fascinating stories from the past. They're warnings. They're mirrors. These same patterns of ego, of fighting the last war, of well-intentioned plans backfiring, they are playing out all around us right now. Which really leaves us with one crucial and pretty unsettling question. What's the next impassable forest that we, today, are choosing to ignore?